Hello and welcome to another Lumbridge Night guide for free-to-play old school RuneScape. In this guide we're going to be going through everything to do with prayer, so blessings of Saradomin be upon us as we venture forth. So why then is prayer worth your investment? Well, prayer is probably, if not the, most crucial combat skill in old school RuneScape. Why is that true? Well, along with a host of other benefits, it also allows you to reduce, if not negate altogether, certain types of damage. Unfortunately, prayer is one of the hardest free-to-play skills to train. Thankfully, however, prayer does actually have one quest, the Restless Ghost quest, a guide to which will be popping up on the screen right about now, which will get you 1125 prayer experience. There are no requirements for this quest, and it can be done by characters straight off Tutorial Island, and that will get you from levels 1 to 9. In terms of technical information to do with prayer, there's not a huge amount. I will point your attention to, obviously, prayers are located on the prayer menu button, and you also have the quick prayer icon on the minimap, which if you right click, set up quick prayers, you can then set up a combination of prayers which when you click that button will automatically go on and off depending on how you click the button. This obviously, if you've seen any of my other videos, is how you do prayer flicking, which is a really useful tool and pretty much a requirement if you're going to go into the members game, and also probably if you want to be a decent PKer. The base mechanics for prayer involve burying bones or sprinkling ashes. Realistically, if you're looking to do this effectively, you probably only really want to be looking at big bones or vile ashes. The other bones just don't really offer much value for money. That said, especially in the case of Ironman, I would recommend all free-to-play players to bury every single bone that they come across in the split second that it takes you to do while you're training or doing a quest. You'll thank yourself for later because it will save you grind time in the long run. The three key prayers in terms of free to play are generally protect from magic, protect from ranged, and protect from melee. These three prayers are referred to as the overheads, generally speaking, and that's because when you have these activated, an icon appears above your character's head. The final thing I want to mention is that you can obviously increase your prayer by the use of certain items, such as the various god armors, which offer additional prayer bonuses on top of the item's base stats. And with that out of the way, let's get into the first section. This is a relatively new area for OSRS, and I am of course talking about the Camdozaal dungeon. The Camdozaal dungeon is located on the west side of Ice Mountain, and unfortunately you cannot access this area straight away. You will need to do the Below Ice Mountain quest in order to access this dungeon. Conveniently, I've got a guide for that as well, which will be popping up on the screen now. This is by no means the fastest and most efficient way of training prayer, but it is a very safe, all-round training option. So ideal for Ironman, for low-level players, or players trying to stick to a budget. Once you're inside, I recommend that you do some Baronite shard mining. This is in order to unlock the various buffs inside of the dungeon. So that is the fishing buff, the mining buff, and the preparation, or like the cooking buff. You're going to need 7,500 Baronite shards. This can take the best part of 2 or 3 hours depending on your mining level. It's a bit tedious, but it's probably worth it if you want to maximize how much experience you're going to get from fishing in the Camdozaal dungeon. Having a minimum of 33 fishing and cooking will allow you to catch and cook tetra, which are the best experience fish you can catch and prepare inside of Camdozaal. You don't need anything. You can pick up a small net, there's one located in the dungeon, and you can also pick up a knife. I know it's not really cooking on a fire, it's preparing with a knife, but it's cooking for this dungeon. As you can see, you just fish there, then you move to one altar, prepare each type of fish, because there's 3 types, guppy, cavefish, and the desired tetra. The more tetra, the more prayer experience you're going to get per hour. And then lastly move to the third one and offer each type of fish. You can spoil the fish, so I recommend, if you haven't already, going into your settings and enabling the shift click to drop items. It'll save you a lot of time. It's a lot quicker than right clicking, trust me. I also recommend just keep the Baronite shards, so you're going to use 3 inventory spaces, 1 for your net, 1 for your knife, and 1 for Baronite shards, because you'll occasionally fish up some Baronite shards. And you may also fish up a Baronite handle, which is part of the Baronite mace if you want to construct that weapon, I recommend you keep it. They're reasonably rare. You'll probably get a couple if you do this for any significant amount of time. The Baronite Mace, if you're an Ironman, you probably want one. It's probably the best free-to-play weapon you can use and unlock. Everyone else, feel free to drop them or bank one and drop the rest. You can actually alch them for a reasonable return. Once you've got your inventory set up, fish full inventories, prepare them and offer them. This should net you around 2,500 prayer experience per hour. Yeah, I know it's not a huge amount of experience, and doing this method to 99 will take a hell of a long time. The benefit is that you can probably do it while you're at work because it's very low click intensity, so it's a pretty AFK method. It also gains fishing and cooking experience. On average, I was getting between 5,000 and 6,000 fishing experience per hour, and I was getting around 7,000 to 8,000 cooking experience per hour. So that's a total of around 16 to 17k per hour across the 3 skills. It's probably worth noting that I prepared and offered all fish. You might be able to increase your prayer EXP by only keeping tetras and throwing the other fish away. However, this will obviously lower your cooking and fishing experience, which may lower the combined overall XP per hour considerably. Method 2 sees us head back to that ye old faithful of the Lumbridge swamp. This method is suitable for any type of account unless you are playing as a skilling pure, in which case you probably want to skip to the next method. Of course, if we're going to the Lumbridge swamp, there is only one enemy in the Lumbridge swamp that's worth any time of day, and that is the giant frogs. These bad boys are quite easy to kill, and they drop big bones, which is what we're interested in. A downside of the giant frogs is that they are quite a common training opponent since they have a very low defense relative to their HP. The reason we're going here in the first place is because they don't have as high a HP as some of the alternatives. Some hints and tips so that you can maximize your prayer experience. Firstly, for those using Rune Light, you probably want to use the highlight plugin. Make sure when you're using this that you set the respawn timer. This will just show you where the giant frogs respawn and also ensure that they are highlighted. Using ranged here might actually be more beneficial as it will bring the giant frogs to you, so you don't have to run around chasing them down. For this method then, I was able to max out on about 3.5 to 4k prayer experience per hour. I've seen other accounts say that they managed to attain about 5k per hour. At base 40, I couldn't replicate that 5k per hour. That's base 40 range or base 40 melee stats. I was only able to get 4k at the best. However, as you level your combat skills, you'll probably be able to kill the frogs a bit quicker, so this will account for the difference. So that's probably about 1,000 EXP per hour more than the Camdozaal method. You don't obviously get any of the fishing or cooking experience, but you will gain combat experience, so I recommend probably melee to be the best because then it's not costing you money in terms of runes or arrows, but you could easily use magic or range, and the frogs can also be easily safe spotted. Whatever combat method you want to train alongside farming bones. Personally, as a minimum in terms of stats and equipment, for pure efficiency, I would recommend base 30 stats and the following equipment as an absolute minimum. Obviously, as you level up and improve your equipment at the same time, you will kill the frogs faster, harvest more bones, and therefore your prayer XP per hour will increase. As a final note, training on the giant frogs does fit into some of my other free-to-play guides, and I'll put links to those on the screen now or in the description. Please like the video and support my content. Thank you, noble knight. Method number 3 is located in an area of the wilderness known as the Boneyard. It's kind of like a valley, and as you might have guessed by the name, it's covered or littered with a mixture of standard and big bones. These can easily be picked up and buried to gain some decent prayer experience. The downside of this method, obviously, it's in the wilderness, so I do not recommend this for hardcore Ironman accounts potentially, because obviously if you get killed it will damage your accounts. Equally, skillers or very low level accounts, there are level 20 and 25 skeletons guarding this area. In terms of the Boneyard then, there's a multitude of methods and you can kind of approach this any way you want. I'm only going to cover kind of the most efficient method, which involves world hopping, and it centers around about the middle of the Boneyard where you'll see the big bone, little bone, big bone pattern. Basically, you need to collect the first big bone, click to bury, and as soon as you've clicked bury, click on the next bone location, so you essentially lose the burying animation. in the tick as you run, and basically don't lose any time waiting for that to happen. Do the same again, and then when you get the final big bone, bury that and perform a world hop. Do the same pattern again in reverse, and if you follow this, you should be able to easily attain an XP per hour rate of around the 6, maybe even 7k per hour mark. Now there's a step 2 to this method that can level up the level of experience even further. What you need to do is open 2 parallel instances of the game, make sure that your account username is set up, and make sure your password is on the clipboard. And also make sure you know how to use the Ctrl-V keyboard shortcut. With this setup, you basically log in, perform the steps as I described there, and before you log out, as you perform the last burial step, you start to log in on the other window. Now very quickly, you then log out on the previous one, and that should result in you almost instantaneously logging in to the next world. And then you keep repeating the pattern, and each time that you're about to bury your last set of bones, start logging in on the opposite screen. This is very click intensive, but can up the rate according to RuneLite to as high as 9.6k was where I got to on it. However, the accuracy of this figure purely depends on you getting perfect overlaps so that you've got almost no downtime. In reality, RuneLite pauses the XP tracker, so any downtime, i.e. time where both screens are logged out, results in a lower XP per hour that will not be accounted for on the tracker. But I did see other videos claiming that you could get an XP rate well above 11k per hour, and while that might be attainable in the short term, the click intensity required I just don't think is sustainable, and I think you'd probably have to add a world change into your dual screen method, which is just a whole extra step. However, this method overall then is still the best so far, and I've proof checked, guaranteed, you can get at least 7.6k per hour running bones in the boneyard. In terms of some tips then, the first thing you want to do in this area is to get rid of the aggro with skeletons. Once the aggro is dropped, the next thing I would do is hide your attack options so that you don't accidentally click on a skeleton and start fighting them during your pattern runs, because obviously that will affect your ability to log out and log back in. And the last thing, I would definitely utilize the ground markers plugin for RuneLite and just make sure you mark those squares. It just makes it a little bit more obvious where you're going to, which makes clicking and remembering your pattern a hell of a lot easier. And that pretty much sums up the boneyard. If you're going to follow this method, why not leave a comment with your XP rate, and if you manage to beat mine, tell me how you did it. So speaking of the fastest, let's move on to the actual fastest free-to-play method, and also the most efficient, but unfortunately by far the most expensive. I'm talking about buying Vile Ashes and Big Bones from the GE. As such, unfortunately, this method will be unattainable to Ironman accounts and will require players to have coins in excess of 260 million. So it is a big investment, and not only that, will take you about 100 hours of intense clicking. It is extremely hardcore, but it's also by far the fastest method. So let's get into it. Also, to ask viewers to take this with a pinch of salt, these figures may go up and down based on RuneScape's economy. So, to do this combined method, you will need approximately 325,861 big bones, which at current prices will cost you the best part of 70 million coins. You will also need the same number of Vile Ashes, which will cost you the best part of 198 million coins, for an approximate investment of a whopping 266 million coins. Obviously, as with a lot of these figures, they are subject to change. The OSRS economy is live, so take these numbers with a pinch of salt. Now, the reason why this is good is because, as you'll have noticed when you're burying your bones seem to take 2 or 3 ticks to actually bury, and you end up clicking on them multiple times, and it's a bit of a pain in the neck. However, if you alternate clicking between Vile Ashes and Big Bones, you can do 2 at the same time pretty much. This massively increases the XP per hour and can potentially lead to experience rates reaching around about the 100k per hour. I managed to get to about 75k per hour. I could have probably clicked this a bit faster, but realistically, if you're going to do this for a long time, I don't think the 100k EXP per hour is very achievable in terms of clicking fatigue. I think you'll inevitably slow down. So I think 75k per hour is probably a much more realistic figure and much more attainable for your average OSRS player. And outside of that, there's not really a lot else when it comes to prayer. RuneScape is a time-hungry game, and getting a 99 is a big achievement. However, no Lumbridge Knight guide would be complete without a hidden tip at the end and a little bit of a trick, which again I've borrowed from OSRS Wiki. Please see a link to their website in the description. So, the bonus. The bonus is, if you have the 250 million plus to invest in the big bones and the vile ashes, an alternative method kind of bends the free-to-play nature of this guide, which is why I've put it in the tips at the end, is to buy a bond. When you buy a bond, this opens up the grand exchange for you to buy dragon bones. So, with a bond at just under 7 million and dragon bones at 2.6k each, to get to 99 would require one bond and 51,724 dragon bones, assuming that you used the altar at the Chaos Temple in the wilderness. That's a total price of 142,653,318 coins, which is approximately 120 million coins cheaper than using big bones and vile ashes. Also, when compared to burying and scattering, this would save the player about 92 hours. 92 hours. So 20 hours compared to 112 hours. That's a significant difference. So which method you choose depends on what you want to do and what your account is about. But I hope that this guide has given you some options and ideas for when you come to train your prayer in OSRS. This brings this video to a close. All that's left for me to say is I've been the Lumbridge Knight, peace out, and thanks for watching.